We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday by the time you hear this. We're recording it Friday afternoon. I have our good friend Ed with us today. People always look forward to hearing from Ed because you're old, you're wise, you have some historical references, and all the stuff we're going through you've seen in the past anyway. So,
Yeah, pretty much.
and that Civil War was a bitch, wasn't it?
Well, it sure was. Yeah, you couldn't get good stuff. I mean, the supply lines were down. It was just awful.
Yeah. Well, we were talking before we came on about the I don't know if it's the biggest news story, but uh, yeah, I guess it probably is. There's so many fucked up stories. It's hard to pick out which is the worst. But we've been talking about the Kilmar Abrega Garcia guy that was picked up by Trump in the Nazi-esque ICE group and hauled out of the country and sent to El Salvador. Uh, they acknowledged that that was wrong. There was a clerical error. Um, and then Senator Van Hollen goes down and tries to see that if he's alive, because I think there was some real concern
Sure.
that he wasn't alive given where he was sent to. First day he gets there, they say, now you can't see him. So that was troubling. It told me that the guy was probably dead. But then Van Hollens persisted and he went down there and he did end up meeting with him. And he, from the pictures I've seen, he seems to be healthy and relatively safe at this point. So that was good news to that extent. Of course, Van Hollens couldn't get him out of the jail. The thing that troubled me about this when Van Hollens was asking the questions, if he hasn't been convicted of anything in America, and if he hasn't been convicted of anything in El Salvador, especially since he hasn't been here for 11 years, why is he still in prison? And the answer that the government gave was very compelling. Well, because Donald Trump is paying us.
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
scary no. That's a scary notion that Donald Trump can just throw out some money to a foreign country and lock up whoever he wants.
Yeah, and this did not originate with Donald Trump. Let me say that right away. And that this is something that has flown under the radar for a long time. And it needs to be brought forward. And if I'm the one who has to do it, I will. And because I know you have a lot of great listeners who will pass this along. And this is true, okay? We have been doing this for years, but we've been doing it, they were called black sites, okay? And this was
Okay.
during the Iraq War, where the Bush administration and Dick Cheney and all of his accomplices went to these countries like El Salvador, where we have these cozy relationships with dictators, and they said, we want to get information from these people, these terrorists that we picked up, many of which were not, many of which were just sold to the Americans as terrorists when they were just people they were picking off the street. This is absolutely documented. You could look it up. There was a cab driver, for instance, that was sent to Guantanamo. But a lot of these were sent to different sites around the world where we have, as I say, we have these cozy relationships with dictators who could do whatever they want without any sort of restrictions by law or anything that we had. We have a no torture thing, right? You can't do it. It can't be done, except if you send them to a different country, they can use their enhanced interrogation techniques on
Yeah.
anybody. And there's no real oversight here. People look, the Congress looks the other way, the courts look the other way, and so forth, because these are, quote, terrorists. You put a label on them, you can send them anywhere and do anything to them. And these are horrendous tortures. These are terrible things. And mostly we know that what you get from tortures is agreement with whatever you say,
Right.
just to stop it. Okay, you very rarely get any sort of real information. And no, we did not get information by using torture. There's a famous movie about 9/11 and the aftermath and so forth, where we supposedly got Osama bin Laden because we used enhanced interrogation techniques, torture on people, and got information. It's bullshit. It was a fucking movie, okay? Bullshit. All right. It never works. It's horribly immoral. There is no reason for it. And this is just an extension of that. So it's not just Trump, it's George Bush, it's Dick Cheney, it's all of these fuckers that have been around for so long trying to subvert democracy. And quite frankly, they were just as much an oligarch and just as enabling to oligarchs as Trump is the Republican Party. It is a festering sore that needs to be eradicated.
So what you're saying basically is what we're seeing with this Garcia guy isn't anything new.
No,
The only difference here is the previous presidents were better at concealing it or hiding it, and that Donald Trump is just the dumbest among them, and he gets caught.
that's right. Or not doing it. Now, I will say this. I don't know that if they went to Obama and say, we're doing this, can we keep doing it? Or they just did it. I don't know if he was aware of it and he settled and said, this is what we have to do to fight terrorism. I don't know. But the fact is, it has been going on since Bush. It is certainly was in Trump's first term, may have been under Biden. I don't know that. I just know that this has taken place. And it's taken there's another turn to it that has to be addressed. Now, you were living in Minneapolis when the George Floyd thing went down, right?
Right. Right.
Okay, and this was a man who was tortured to death by a police officer in full view of the public, and people came out in protest. Now, there's a very famous video of the guy with the umbrella. This is a guy in a wearing black kind of combat uniform. He has a black umbrella that he's carrying and a hammer. And he goes to the auto zone right across the street from the third precinct. Was it third or fourth? I forget. We lived
Third.
in it. Third
Third.
precinct. Police officers, police station. And he breaks the window out with a hammer, and people start going in and grabbing shit, right? So he
Right.
instigated this, and this happened all over Minneapolis. And we had these reports of these black SUVs driving around at high speeds through town, and fires would erupt, or windows would be broken, and they were essentially turning protests into riots. This was outside people. I don't know they were ICE agents, and maybe they weren't. Maybe even at that point, Trump had some sort of secret police within the Secret Service or something like that was doing this. We know it was being done. I have some contacts within the Minneapolis Police Department who told me flat out these were people from outside who were coming into town and sparking the violence. Some of them thought they were just people from the suburbs who were opportunists or politically motivated. Others thought they were from somewhere further away. It was never established, but that guy with the umbrella is emblematic of what was going on, sparking these protests so that Trump was hoping to declare the Insurrection Act at that point. The people who were in power then with him, the Joint Chiefs and so forth, said no. That we cannot do that. You cannot do that. It's not warranted. And he backed down, which he always does if somebody steps up to him. But this is what's going on. And also we found out there's a video right now of a quote ICE agent breaking out a window with a sledgehammer to
Right.
arrest someone who is not, by the way, it was even a wrong person in that car. Now we know that was not an ICE agent. He's a guy who started his own militia, and they are working with ICE. And this is the thing. We see this all the time. We see an ICE agent or two, and then 4 or 5 other people with these black masks on. Those aren't ICE agents. There's some sort of militia, some sort of thing like that. And I believe that Stephen Miller is orchestrating the whole thing. And I sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, but this is not a crazy conspiracy. We've seen it. We know what's going on. This is what's happening. This is the roadmap. And I do believe it's Stephen Miller's roadmap. I believe he's just copying the Nazis one step at a time. They went for the Jews and other, quote, undesirables first. They
Right.
set up camps outside of Germany, in Poland, to begin with. And then after they had gone after the Jews and the what do we call it? They called it mental defectives, which Trump has already mentioned and talked about,
Right.
and also the Romani people and people like this, marginal people as they saw them first. Then the next step was political opponents. We're to that step. I mean, this is the Nazis in overdrive. because they have the plan. They don't have to invent it. They are just emulating it. And that's what's next, political opponents. And then
Now,
guys
when you,
like you and me.
yeah, well, when you bring up these militias, I just want to
Yes,
be clear about this. The idea that militias would be forming under a Donald Trump presidency isn't crazy. We've seen it. We saw it on
right.
January 6, 2021. Are you suggesting that these militias, these dumb fucks with weapons, are in fact sanctioned by ICE and by the Trump
Yes,
administration, basically
yes,
outsourced to dumb
yes.
fucks to do this damage? Really?
Yes, absolutely. We know that the guy with the sledgehammer is the head of his own militia that he formed in order to, quote, protect the border. We know this. This is known. This is a fact. We
Oh,
also know that the others exist, the Proud Border, Proud Boys, the Three Percenters. These people didn't go away after January 6th. We got a few of them in jail for a while till Trump pardoned them all. And these were criminals. These were criminals who pleaded guilty in most part or were found guilty by evidence and were sentenced to a certain amount, which then he called them heroes and hostages and so forth and let them all out, even though they contributed to death of police officers and maiming and so forth and trashed the Capitol and did everything that we know they did. You know, it was not a walk in the park by any means. But those folks are still out there and they're pissed off. You know, they did have to go to jail. What do you think they're going to do now?
yeah. Well, you mentioned martial law and the Insurrection Act, and when this airs, it's Saturday, the 19th, which is the date of the mass protests throughout the country. We got 5 million on April 5th. They're expecting more this time. People are angry. People are upset. The interesting thing about April 5th, there was very little disruption. It was all
Right.
very very calm. And well, I don't know about calm, but there was no violence, there was no
Right.
disruption.
Mm-hmm.
So the big one is happening today. There are people all over the internet saying, "Oh, on April 20th, Donald Trump is going to initiate martial law, the Insurrection Act." And for me personally, I think it would be very hard for him to do that. I think it's just something that's set out as kind of a scare tactic, a bullying tactic. It's coming. You better watch out. You better watch out. We got to keep people scared. What are your thoughts about him attempting to do martial law, to implement martial law or the Insurrection Act? Do you think that's a real possibility?
I do. It's in the plan. Whether he has the guts to go through with it or the people behind him have the guts to go through with it, I'm not sure. We see that he gives when there's pushback. When the bond market tanked, he blinked, he stopped, he paused, quote, the tariffs. We
Yeah.
saw that happen. That was pushback, you know, from the financial sector there, which he has to pay attention to, even though now he's going after the financial sector, starting with the Fed chairman, of course.
Yeah.
But people going into the streets peacefully, showing their numbers makes a difference. Now, having said that, we saw what happened with George Foreman, and it wasn't just the George Foreman. I'm
Floyd,
not saying, I mean Ford, George Floyd, and not Foreman. We're protesting your hamburger
your
things.
your grills, yeah.
Yeah, no, George Floyd, right. See, I'm old.
Yeah, we're both old.
Yeah, but we saw what happened with the George Floyd protests. They started out peacefully, people coming out, and it wasn't just black people; it was people of all races
Yeah.
who were part of it. And it took place in my former neighborhood, your former neighborhood, that for that matter, a very diverse neighborhood, a neighborhood that is very liberal, and people came out peacefully. But then these outside elements entered in and turned it into these riots. And we see riots happen, you know, every Christmas at Walmart when nobody can get the new Elmo toy and stuff. You know,
Right, right.
it just takes a spark because you know, as the guy in Young Frankenstein says, a mob is a terrible thing, you know, and it's true. It always is. And once it reaches that point, there's no stopping it. And it doesn't take much to do it. They realize this. A little violence goes a long way. A few smashed windows will garner you many, many more. And then criminal opportunists will enter in and also seek to exploit the situation. So a peaceful protest can quickly turn into something else. And that's why peaceful protests need their own security. They need people to come to be there who are on the lookout for this type of thing and be willing to step in and stop it. Am I saying that they need to go armed? I am not. But I am saying you have to protect yourself and you have to realize that this is their justification. They want to criminalize protest. They have said as much. They have said as much, and they have tried to do it. See what happens. You see what happens to people when they speak up at Republican town halls. A lot of them are dragged out when all they're doing is voicing their concerns.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have a friend of the podcast, Old Soul, who
Yes.
is an absolute activist, and she's out getting ready for one of the protests tomorrow, um, or actually today. Now that we're listening today, um, and I asked her about that. I said, when you go out to these protests and there's so many people, do you run into these Trump-fucks trying to cause problems? And she says, yeah, we do. But they quickly leave when they realized how much they're outnumbered by.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to go in and start a mob scene because you got people in the streets with the George Floyd thing. When you've literally got tens of thousand people fighting for the same thing, and one guy, or two guys, or 10 guys come in, it's not hard to shut them down and run them off because they're cowards in the first place, and they aren't going to uh, they aren't going to be able to inflame that kind of protest because it's a different kind of protest. Everybody was mad at the police. Everybody was fighting mad. This is a different situation because we're pushing against the government and some of the things that are going on. And the kind of people that are coming out, the liberals and such, aren't the kind of people that would fight or break windows or that sort of thing. So I'm wondering if just by virtue of how many people we have out there, if that in itself isn't a kind of a security against these interlopers.
Yes, you're exactly right. Numbers are the only thing that count. The more people you have, they will not attack a large crowd. They will attack a small crowd.
Right.
Even here in solid red East Tennessee, when the protests have been called, people are out all around me in the larger cities. They're out in Knoxville. They're out in Johnson City. They're even out in Kingsport.
Right.
People are turning out to these protests, and they're not just Democrats, which, quite frankly, there aren't that many. But and these town halls where Mike Johnson, the great Christian Mike Johnson, stands up and says, "Well, it's all Trump. I mean, it's all Democrats who are
Democrats.
going to these meetings, these town halls early and getting all the seats so they can cause trouble." He's a liar. Did he never hear of do not bear false witness? Did he never hear of that? Or does he serve some sort of greater good by
Yeah.
lying through his teeth? This is the thing. All of these self styled Christians are not because they ignore anything that does not serve their purpose. They see themselves as some sort of modern day apostle or something, and they're just idiots. These people have always been a part of humanity. The bullies, those who prey on the weak, that's all they are.
I'm curious. You live in a red state, Tennessee,
Yeah,
and you live in a really red town, a really
yeah,
red area of Tennessee.
completely. Mhm.
Um, what do you think the vibe is amongst these people that clearly mostly voted for Donald Trump? There's obviously some complaints against this administration, even for the Republicans. In a little town in a red state, what's the climate like with people's attitudes about what's going on?
There are. Within this town, I will say that there are some, like me, some liberal Democrats. We tend to keep a lower profile. Some do not. And quite frankly, the ones who are most vocal are folks who have been here for a long time, whose families have been here a long time, and have some influence. Okay,
Right.
so to a certain extent, I salute their bravery for being who they are, but to a certain extent, they are insulated because they know if they call the police, they will come because of the name. Okay.
Right. Right.
Um, then you have a wide group, and these are a lot of the people that I went to school with who just don't pay attention. They know they're Republican by heritage and they vote Republican. They probably watch Fox News if they watch news. And or if they're married and they're women, they tend to go with what their husband runs the politics, they run the home kind of thing. It's
Right.
it's
Right.
that kind of thing, kind of a 1950s vibe, if you will. And and then you have the maggots that are just the same as they're everywhere else. You know, they don't have much in the way of intelligence. They're not. They probably do not have traditional jobs, so they probably not paying into Social Security, so they don't expect to get it. They may or may not be receiving government assistance, but they tell themselves that they deserve it in any way. If it's Medicaid, it's not government. We have TennCare, which is just Medicaid with a different name. They're uninformed and they hate liberals. They despise liberals because they see them as the people who have made things harder for them by them making things a little easier for minorities. They see life as pie. And if the minorities get a little piece, that means they took it from the white people. So they're largely racist, not well educated, and they are totally bought into Trump as some sort of almost religious figure.
Are they feeling any pinch now because of Donald Trump's policies, whether it be the tariffs or loss of employees because of deportation? Are these Republicans, these Trumplafucks, realizing any harm to them because of what Donald Trump has done at this point?
Not yet. You know, they still think that somehow or other they're going to get a big check from these all this money that's pouring in from these tariffs that they're actually paying. They just don't realize it. It's been instructive to watch what's going on at my local grocery store. Initially after COVID, prices went way up and so forth.
Right.
I'm exempting eggs because that's bird flu. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what got that going and so forth. And gas, because nobody really controls gas. You know, it's a world market, and that's what it is. I mean, you can occasionally do things like Biden did. Go in and raid the oil reserve, but and bring down the price of gas. And then fill it up again at a lower price, which is what he did,
Right.
which was really smart. And guys like Trump are too stupid to do things like that. They don't understand it. But
Right.
my grocery bill, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing things double. When I used to go and pay $70 and I'm paying 150, it's back there. I don't know if the reports around the country, maybe it's regional. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I do see that there has been a big increase. And yet I see all of these people who have this selective memory saying that gas is lower and the cost of groceries is lower than it was under Biden. It's not true. Unemployment is up. Everything is worse under Trump than it was under Biden, and substantially worse. But it hasn't hit them yet. When it will hit them is when they go to the doctor and the doctor says, I'm sorry, I can't treat you. You don't have Medicaid anymore. It's gone. You are not on Medicaid. Or they go to the local food shelf and there's no food there because it was filled by government money that is they are no longer getting. And that sort of thing. Farmers that have crops that won't sell because they were bought by U.S. aid and those contracts were canceled and now there's no place for them to go. When that starts hitting home, then you will see, and I'm hoping, I'm praying that they start to see it before the midterms.
Yeah, well, I've been hearing in terms of the tariffs that we would probably start to see some raising prices in a lot of things, if not everything, maybe as soon as mid-May, which would be good. I feel bad talking about what's going on with Donald Trump and knowing everything's going to crash and it's going to go to shit. Uh, I tend to think that the faster the better. I mean, if it's inevitable that we're going to crash and suffer, let's do it quick, get it done, so we can fucking expose these idiots for who they are and get people who don't have enough intelligence to realize it in advance, realize it after they get their ass kicked.
I hope so. I think the problem here is I would really like that to be averted as much as possible because
Sure.
most of my friends are my contemporaries, or at least within 10 years, right? Like you and
Right.
my brother and so forth. I don't want to see those people suffer unduly, certainly. I mean, you always have economic ups and downs. Okay, that goes with the territory. You know it. You roll with it. You do what you can to minimize the harm and so forth. I think to a certain extent, and there's one theory, and it may not be far off, that he's trashing the economy on purpose, because we saw he announced those tariffs, the markets fell, and then he was out there telling everybody to buy. You're gonna make money, and he had people in his office, big money people. He made so many million. He made so many million. This sort of thing on this, like this is a good thing, but I'm afraid that if everything crashes, the ones with money, the oligarchs, will just buy up everything and we'll be in a worse pickle. That's kind of what happened with the farmers in the Depression. I mean, we had the Dust Bowl years where there was a drought and the crops failed, so the banks foreclosed on the land. But they didn't lose money. They acquired the land. They acquired the assets of the farmers, who then had to move across the country, being chased across the country, chased out of every venue till they couldn't go into the ocean. They had to stay in California and pick fruit, and which is what they did. And then gradually, because of Roosevelt and his policies, things got better again. But it was the Republicans who trashed the economy. Whether they did it on purpose or not, I'm not sure. I think it was worse than they thought it would be, because then it became a worldwide thing that went on much longer than they thought it would. But bear in mind that these people have one religion. It's getting as much money as they can. And if a lot of other people starve to death or die or killed or whatever, they don't really give a fuck. They just don't. They see themselves as the privileged ones that God favors, and that everybody else is just if they can contribute to their wealth, then okay, they can hang around. If they take away from their wealth, they would just as soon they died. This is absolutely true.
Now, as far as the stock market and crashing the stock market on purpose, maybe you can clarify this for me, because this is what I don't understand. Okay, people say he crashed the stock market so people could buy things in the stock market cheap. Okay, that makes some sense, and maybe that was what happened this last
Only
time around.
certain, only certain
Well,
people. I
right,
don't have a stockpile of money that I can go out and buy a whole bunch of stock. All
right.
of my stocks are, part of a retirement account that I have no control over what they own or what they do with it. You know,
My
when
question is
the,
this though: if you have to wipe $10 trillion out of the stock market, that would come out of those same people that are invested in the stock market. How does that make any sense? So I'm going to wipe trillions of dollars out of the stock market so I can make millions of dollars later buying it cheap. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me either, and it's really more of a justification. That's not what they started out to do. He spun it. He's
Right.
trying to spin it, and the people behind him are trying to spin it that this was somehow a good thing. It wasn't. Okay, this is just their spin. His tariffs caused everything to go in the toilet. So they look for any silver lining they can find. So brings in these oligarchs and says, "You made this much money. You made this much money. It was a good thing. It's bullshit. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't understand tariffs. He doesn't know anything. But some of the people behind him, they know what's coming. Marjorie Taylor Greene traded something a huge amount of money. I mean, she sold a bunch of stocks, bought a bunch of stocks. It was pure insider trading. She knew what was coming. She took advantage of it.
Right. Well, I mean, if I wasn't in the stock market and I was astute enough to see it drop to the bottom and then understand it was going to come back because Donald Trump was going to pull back, even if Donald Trump didn't say that, I knew it was coming eventually, I would have made a lot of money,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because I'm not invested that deeply into the stock market. But it's like when somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to buy a new house because prices are down on houses." Well, that's well and good, but the price and value of your house that you currently live in is also lower too. So it just evens it out. It's not that big a deal. Those people already in the stock market that have a lot of money invested got their ass kicked for $1 trillion. And I think you're exactly right. It's just part and parcel of what Donald Trump does. He takes a
yeah,
shitty moment and he tries to spin it as a positive. You know, when they came back 3,000 points in one day, the biggest gain ever. Never mind the fact that since February, it's dropped 7,000 points.
right.
So you came back about 40% from what you lost when we were riding high. And for whatever reason, some people buy into it. I had to talk to Trump, like I said, it's the greatest, it's the greatest day in the stock market. What do you say about that now? Fuck you, you stupid son of a bitch. When are you going to
Yeah,
get the other 4,000?
right. Exactly. And sometimes I think all of this, I think the guy being deported, a lot of things are just put out there as a distraction to the really big one. And the really big one is the tax bill, the budget, right? Which includes the tax bill. Because what they're trying to do here is defund everything that is good for you or me or people who make less than you and me. Everybody, it hurts everybody below 400,000, and it probably will, be great for everybody who makes above 400,000. And the really big, the people at the top will do the best. They're looking at raising the debt ceiling by a huge amount, and they're looking at cutting taxes on the oligarchs by like $7 trillion. And that's revenue. They are cutting the taxes so we don't get that revenue. That's $7 trillion in revenue that we do not get to fund things like, because all revenue that goes into the government, if there's a deficit, it has to be spent to lower that. Okay. And that includes Social Security. They offset that Social Security revenue by putting them, giving these bonds that supposedly that can be redeemed then to pay Social Security as needed. But if you have no revenue coming in, there is nothing to redeem those bonds with, and then you default. And this is the plan. This is the plan that we won't cut Social Security, we won't cut it, we won't cut Medicare, we won't cut Medicaid. What they will do is say, there's no money. We have to default. This is the plan. This is the big one. This is the one we should have our eye on. And this is the one you should be talking to your senator and your representatives about, your senators, if you have two, and your representatives about, because it's going to destroy the American economy. Because we are not going to have the money to make up for it. They always, what they have done since Reagan is shift it down so that they don't tax the corporations, they don't tax the rich people, but they tax the hell out of us. And it's
Right.
not just the federal tax, but it's also the state tax and stuff. So this is what they're looking for. They're looking to make us all so poor that we have to do. I just saw an announcement. They were looking for people to pick blueberries in Pennsylvania, $11 an hour, 7 to 10 hours a day. And of
So white
course,
people, white people, there's some jobs that the brown people didn't get. Let's get out there and get those fucking jobs.
exactly. And nobody is doing that now. I noticed that Trump is saying, well, we're going to protect our farmers, we're going to work with our farmers, and we will go by their recommendations as to who we deport. So in other words, welcome back to the plantation, folks. Only this time they're going to be Hispanic. And all we have to do to keep them is say, okay, you work my fields and your name goes on the list. You don't show up, your name goes off the list and you're back to Nicaragua or wherever you came from, or a prison in El Salvador, or one of our local for-profit prisons where you'll be working, for corporations for five
Right.
bucks a day, $1 a day, whatever it may be. That's happening too. So we're looking at bringing back slavery to pick our crops. Only this time it will be primarily Hispanic people.
What are your thoughts about? There's obviously been a huge amount of pushback regarding Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. These protests, there were a lot of older people out there, younger people that have to take care of those older people. There's obviously been some movement or some concern in the Republican Party. We're hearing that in the House of Representatives, there's 12 Republicans saying, "Yeah, I'm not gonna vote to cut Medicaid." Um, Everything they did try to do to hide the fact that they were cutting Medicaid, I think the Democrats did a good job messaging. No, they're cutting Medicaid, and here's why. So now we have some Republicans kind of stepping back and saying, "Yeah, I don't know if I want to do the Medicaid thing," because that really is the red line. If they do that and they hurt people in their own constituency, they're going to get fucking fried. And since they only care about getting reelected, we found that out. Uh, they're going to have to make a tough decision here, and it sounds like they're thinking twice about this budget package, and it's in trouble right now.
I hope so. I hope that the Democrats have been able to talk to them and say, look, this is going to impact you. Think about it. Say you're a congressperson from, say, a place like East Tennessee.
Mhm.
Um, you have four elderly parents. That is, your husband has two, you have two. They're all in nursing homes. They're in memory care units. They may live another 20 years, but you either take care of them at home or you pay out of pocket or you work some way where they're being, you have them sell off all their assets on paper so that they're eligible for Medicaid to be in a nursing home. That's largely what happens, right?
Right.
Most elderly people in this country who are not, parents of the super wealthy, who have these private nursing homes and stuff. A lot of people eventually wind up in a nursing home and is being paid for by Medicaid, right?
Right. Right.
Now, when even those representatives go, geez, I'm going to have to take care of four people here out of my own pocket. Maybe I won't vote for that,
Right.
or
Right.
maybe the people who voted for them are saying, look, I've got four parents here and a couple of aunts and uncles and stuff and somebody's going to have to take care of these people. We should have had, and we could still have universal health care that included long-term care and memory care and all of that. We could have that. We could have it very easily. And all we have to do is go back to before Reagan on the tax policy. Tax the fuck out of corporations, tax the fuck out of rich people because they won't miss it ultimately. They still make money. I think it was Mark Twain or somebody like that, who pointed out that if you cut taxes on poor people, they'll take that money and spend it and jumpstart the economy. You give it to rich people, they buy a new yacht or they offshore it somehow so they don't have to pay taxes on it, or they live on debt so they don't have any income. There's ways around it, right, for them,
Right. Right.
but not for you. So every time that you cut taxes on poor people, it works. It stimulates the economy because then they can afford to buy a little more at the grocery store. They can buy 2 pounds of hamburger instead of one, or they can upgrade something, or maybe they buy a new car, whatever it may be, or a better car, let's say, or they replace the lawnmower that just broke, like I did, or cutting taxes on the poor makes sense. Cutting taxes on rich people guarantees you that your country will eventually fall apart. It's that simple.
I get the sense that, Donald Trump came into office with all his goofballs, and they went to town, as they used to say in my neighborhood. They were going to town, and they were just a whirlwind of shit, and they continued to be a whirlwind of shit. But I've noticed a shift sort of because the pushback is getting heavier. The failures are becoming more frequent. Just dumb stuff. Like let's talk about the deportation of this Garcia guy. These people have a problem now because they sent this guy away, acknowledged it was wrong, it was a clerical error. They said they wouldn't get him back. They couldn't get him back because El Salvador is a sovereign nation, which makes no sense because El Salvador didn't charge him with anything. Donald Trump sent him down there and rented space. When the government of El Salvador was asked, why can't you let him go? They said because Donald Trump was paying him. Now that's a problem. The other
Yeah,
problem we have with this guy is when we didn't see him, we presumed he was dead. And I think that was a relatively reasonable presumption based on where he was sent. So now we do see him. Donald Trump says, I can't get him back because the president won't send him back. So now this senator who did a very brave thing in going down there,
yeah,
and it's good to see a Democrat step up like that. I want to see him. They said no. He stayed and said, I want to see him. And then he finally met him. The
yeah.
fact that they were able to get in and see this guy, this senator, um, and see Garcia, see that he's alive, and that's good news. I got to think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Donald Trump. You said you couldn't get to him, you couldn't find him, you didn't know. You're in court right now. Just yesterday or the day before, court basically slammed the Trump administration about this game they're playing about saying they can't get him. The judge basically said that's bullshit and you can. Now that we've seen Garcia, does that not ramp up the pressure on Donald Trump and the Trump administration?
Well, it should. Any reasonable, number one, any reasonable administration would never have done it. I mean, the Constitution is quite clear. I don't care how many talking heads you put on Sunday morning or interview on Fox News and talk about historical this or historical that. It's bullshit. It is quite clear that anyone under the power of the United States also has certain rights, and due process is number one. It is just, it's there. It cannot be gotten around. They've tried to do it before. They actually have done it before. Trump's favorite president right now, who he never heard of before a few months ago, McKinley,
Yeah.
very expansionist president. So he's emulating McKinley in so many ways, and that one of those was when we took territories, when we took Cuba and Guam and um, um, the Philippines in particular. He declared that although we now owned these territories, the people within them did not have rights under the Constitution. That was his argument. And at that stage of the game, the Supreme Court at that time was very much like the one we have now. It was pretty much a rubber stamp
Right.
for the president. And because like then they got to put people in and they put in people like themselves. So that was why he was able to get away with that. Same thing with Jackson, the Trail of Tears, getting rid of the Native Americans out of the Carolinas and Tennessee and sending them out to Oklahoma. That was a Supreme Court justice said you can't do that, and he said enforce it and went ahead and did it anyway. And Republicans point to this like this is something that should be emulated. No, what should be done is ripping Andrew Jackson's picture off the money and downgrading him to a criminal because that's what he was. I'm sorry. Okay, he won a battle after a war was over. Big fucking deal.
Doesn't it seem like the Trump and the Republicans in general are worse off than they were even say 3 months ago because
Oh,
they're,
absolutely.
they're getting so much pushback, the protests, the exposure. The media is finally seeing the value financially in kicking their ass. I mean, I watched and they seem to be trying so fucking hard. This was almost embarrassing. You talked about Stephen Miller kind of being the puppet master behind, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing for Stephen Miller is as evil as he is, his mind is so twisted that he's stupid on top of it. He sat on television literally suggesting what the Supreme Court said about Garcia was a win for Donald Trump. 9 Supreme Court justices support what Donald Trump says. It was the most obvious, most embarrassing attempt at gaslighting I've ever fucking seen. And it was just stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid except to the base. They believe it.
Yeah.
They believe that no matter what. I see on TikTok all the time, these blatant lies and
Yeah.
then I look at the comments and they're eating it up. They're eating
Right.
it up. And then I delete a bunch of people and and block the website or the whoever put that up because that's the only way to. Every time you engage with one of these assholes, you are also putting their message out there. What you do, like when you go live and that sort of thing, that's valuable, I think, because you have a lot of people contributing that are actually know what they're
Yeah.
doing and so forth. That's different. See, what the media is doing now, and remember, the media is now completely owned, except for NPR and a few others, which they're trying to get rid of and probably
Right.
will. They are, which doesn't mean that it's going to go away. I mean, you and I work for a public radio station, and we got squat
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We got a little bit of tiny equipment grant, but we stayed on the air because we had listeners who liked what we did, and they responded when we did a pledge drive. Every public radio institution can do that.
Right.
Okay, if you're worth your salt, if you have people listening, it should be easier for you now because you're the only one telling the truth.
Right.
So,
Right.
and sell that message. That's what they have to do now. They have to say, all the other media in this town is lying to you. We're telling you the truth. This is
Well,
this is the voice of America now, which I'm sure you noticed that Vladimir Putin called up Trump and said, send Carrie Lake over to get rid of Voice of America. It's irritating, which she did.
Well, I've always heard about Voice of America. I can't honestly say I've ever listened to Voice of America. Is Voice of America even that important now with social media when people like us or other social media creators can get anywhere in the fucking world? It's one thing when you have a broadcast license and you can go out to 3 states, but we're sitting here. I got people in Ireland and the UK and in New Zealand. Is the voice, I mean, I'm not saying the Voice of America doesn't do a good job. I don't know much about it because I've never listened to it. Um, but that's kind of trying to shut the door after the fucking cows are out.
Well, the Voice of America is not for you and me. It's not for people in America. The Voice
Right.
of America was booming into Eastern Europe during during when it was completely communist and under Russian control, where they were
Right.
all Soviet socialist republics, right? Voice of America was going in there. It's bombarding Cuba. It's bombarding China. It's bombarding all of these places where there are small groups of people who are getting the truth. And it's very important for that reason. And people will tell you, I mean, people in Eastern Europe and all of these places that are controlled by these back then communist, and I use quotes because there's never been a communist government, not really, or certainly not for
Right.
very long. But
Right.
they all turned into either kleptocracies or some sort of oligarchies or something like that very quickly. Um,
Yeah.
but it had an impact. And even in Korea, where I was, I would listen to it because I spoke Korean, of course, and hear what they were saying and so forth. And I would walk down the street, and occasionally I would hear coming from one of the establishments or someone, I would hear the Voice of America. So yes, people do listen to it, but it's not for us. Even as a soldier, we had the Armed Forces Network, which was totally separate. That was what Robin Williams was doing in Hello
Right.
Vietnam. That was Armed Forces Radio, not Voice of America. So Voice of America is aimed at other populations, telling them, no, what you're living under is not freedom. It is oppression, and here's why. And in some of those countries, just having a radio that could get Voice of America was, a felony and so forth. But yet they did. They did. They were in basements and they were in, interior rooms and so forth where people could listen. Yes, it was important. And it was anti-communist or whatever the regime was. And that's why Putin wanted to get rid of it, because it does, and it was Putin, I guarantee you. I think a lot of the strings are being called, also the international strings are being pulled by Putin, the national ones by Stephen Miller, and somewhat to by Elon Musk, the financial ones, I think. I think he's really in just there. You know, we see him canceling contracts and putting his own in. We see him doing that. That should be a felony. He should be in jail now.
Yeah. Do you think somebody like Stephen Miller or some of these people around them, around Donald Trump, doing these things, thinking they've got a total license to do it because Donald Trump will protect them? Well, I think what they fail to understand is there'll be a time when Donald Trump is not here, whether mortally or legally or politically. He won't be a factor. He's going to be 79 in a month or two. He's not in good health. Who knows what's going to happen to him politically or even legally? Aren't people like Stephen Miller and some of the people around him potentially at risk for their own criminal efforts? I mean, Elon Musk actually committed crimes. His
Yeah.
19-year-old techno twinks, they committed crimes. And when Donald Trump is not there to protect them and Pam Bondi is no longer the attorney general, which could be sooner than later, they gotta, who's going to fucking protect them?
Nobody.
Aren't they thinking
Uh,
about that?
I think there are plenty of people in Washington right now who have a list, and Stephen Miller's right at the top of it.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean,
I
this
certainly
guy is a
would.
creepy, evil-looking motherfucker. You know, there were bad guys during the Nixon reign, and that went to jail. And Stephen Miller, for as creepy and as goofy as this fucker looks, he probably would be at the top of the list of people wanting to take down, maybe right after Elon.
Um, the story on Stephen Miller, and this was from people who went to high school and college with him, is he's always been creepy. He's always been the one in the corner that nobody wants to be around because he's creepy, you know, and that's why Donald Trump is drawn to those people. You know, whether it was, you know, his lawyer from the red baiting days, whose name escapes me at the moment, or whoever it is. You know, his first administration filled with them, and this one is far, far worse. You know,
Yeah.
whether it's Linda McMahon talking about A1 or Hegseth going on signal for all of his secret stuff, and apparently there have been some other um, information leaks that are being investigated and people removed, even from Hegseth's group, for other things that were just letting things like the guy being deported dominate the news cycle and disasters and a plane crash here, a helicopter crash there, whatever, letting those dominate is see, this is why the media is so compromised. They'll go for something, they'll ignore something that is really valuable that you really need to know about, and concentrate on something that is inconsequential really in the long haul. I'm not saying the guy being deported, that's a big one because it was violation of due process. The Supreme Court did step up and said you must facilitate the return of this person. And we have a judge saying, I'm considering criminal contempt charges. That's still fighting back, you know.
Right.
We'll
Right.
see what happens. But we've got to get the news out of the hands of the oligarchs. No oligarch should be able to own the New York Times or the Washington Post or CBS or NBC or any of them. And we must fully fund public radio and public television. They're in danger. You know, they didn't happen overnight. They were put in place in my lifetime. They didn't exist before that, and they have served a purpose. They need to keep doing it. But guys, I'm talking to public radio people right now, public TV people. Go to your audience. Tell them the truth. Say, if you want this, you have to support it. We'll do without the government money, but you have to step up.
Yeah. Yeah, you know the thing about it is the whole defunding of NPR and this we've heard this before. This is something the Republicans have attempted before. There were threats of that. They've always had a problem with NPR, and it probably has a lot to do with them telling the truth. But you bring up a good point too regarding this deportation and this Garcia situation. It is a terrible situation, but this is pretty much the way Donald Trump does things. He has horrible stories, horrible scandals, and then he distracts people with something else. The whole thing with Pete Hegseth and the Signalgate thing, that should be still be very troubling to us. Now, as you said, they're firing guys for leaks. One of those leaks was the guy who said, "Oh, by the way, Elon is meeting with Pete Hegseth regarding China," and Donald Trump didn't know about that. So this guy got fired for telling the truth, and they're worried about the leaks. Yet we've got all these high-end people in Signalgate that create the biggest security breach probably in American history, and
Yeah.
none of them have lost a job. My question to some people has been, based on what we saw there and the way other things are being handled, the way Donald Trump handled classified documents, I'm afraid we're at a point in time where we have no national security.
We
We
don't.
have
We
no now.
just we just saw just yesterday we had the story that American nuclear secrets were released to Russia. Just yesterday. I mean,
Wow.
at one point, an administration would have fallen based on that.
You'd think so.
They would have, that would have been it. They would have been done. People would have been screaming because we knew who our enemy was, and they haven't changed. Only we have changed. Only we have softened it toward Putin because Putin's a Christian. Did you know that?
Yeah, Putin's not a Christian. Otherwise, he wouldn't do mass murders and war crimes. Somebody even said that, by the way, anything that goes up through and down from Starlink is
Yeah.
also sent to Russia. Now, I don't know if
Yep.
that's true, but it wouldn't
It's
be
true.
surprising given how
Yeah.
Elon Musk is so tight with Vladimir.
What people must realize, and they won't, Elon Musk is no more a citizen of the United States than Putin is, in
Yeah,
the sense that any loyalty. Elon Musk is a man without a country. He's a man without a state. He has no loyalty to anyone other than to his own. And I'm not even going to say bank account because I don't think money is his motivation. I think power is his motivation. And this idea that he can restructure life on this planet. I think he's pretty much given up on life on this planet. As a matter of fact, he sees that we have too many people. We have this parasite class, as he calls them, and that is anyone who isn't a billionaire, quite frankly, um, that he thinks should just die. Trump is the same way. I mean, he even told his brother that his special needs kid should be sent to Florida where he could just die. He used
yeah.
those words. We
Well,
know that.
I think that Elon and Donald Trump are very similar in the sense they're both narcissistic. And the important thing to understand about narcissists, they really don't care about anybody else. It's all about themselves. You said Elon doesn't have any loyalty to this country, and that's absolutely true. But let's be honest, Donald Trump has no loyalty to
No,
this country. It's
none.
all about enriching himself. And if that means to the detriment of this country or the people in it, he's fine with it. His goal is to what Donald Trump, you're right about the money thing. The money thing is just a way of keeping score.
Yeah,
But what Donald Trump and Elon Musk truly want, they want the power, but they also want the adulation. They want to be considered the smartest, the funniest, the toughest people in the world. They're
yeah,
weak, insecure fucks that have never had that. So now that they find themselves in a situation where they might be able to grab it, at least in their own minds, that's what they're going for. And this is why Elon's so upset. He doesn't understand why people hate him. He really doesn't fucking get it. He thinks he's brilliant.
well, and this is the thing. It's because he doesn't have human emotions. I mean, whether he is, whether it is because he is somehow on the spectrum, or whether it is that um, he has a some sort of, maybe it's because he's a drug addict, which he is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Maybe
He's just
that's part of
weird.
it. Yeah, but it is. His mother actually said it. She was trying to be positive about it, but she said it wasn't the money that he was. It was that he thought that he should be able to. make things better for people, as she put it. But all of the oligarchs, think about this. Remember way back, you won't remember this, and I wasn't there, but I did study about it. The predecessors to our current oligarchs, the guys who, back when McKinley was president,
Right.
these robber barons, they called them, whatever, the
Railroad
Carnegies,
men.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Carnegies, the Rockefellers, and so forth. They had another a side to them because they realized they wanted an image. So Carnegie went out, or Carnegie, if you want, went out and put libraries all over the country. I mean, you can go to most mid-sized cities and you will find it may not be functioning anymore, but it may not be a library anymore, but the building is still there and it's still used in some way for public good with the name Carnegie on it, right? Or Carnegie.
Right.
Same with Rockefeller, with art museums and so forth, and this sort of thing. They and even Walmart, even the Walmart people, the Waltons, they heavily contributed to various things like public, good and so forth. This crop doesn't. There's no Bezos hospital. There's no nothing that isn't a scam for Trump. I mean, he had a kid's cancer fund that he used like an ATM. Then, he can't have a charity anymore. All of these guys, they do not do public good. Look at what did we just see with the space shot the other day with Hoda and Katy
Not
Perry.
not not Hoda, Gail King, and Katy
Gail
Perry. Yeah.
King, yeah, yeah, Gail King, beg pardon, and old guy. All right. But yeah, and Katy Perry, this is what they do. How much did that cost? I didn't get a final figure on it, but it's in the billions probably just for
Yeah.
that one shot into space. And for what? For what? Oh, we're advancing science. Bullshit. We could have done that. We could have done that 50 years ago. What you just
Yeah.
did, we could do 50 years ago. We did it. We did
Absolutely.
better. We went to the moon.
Yeah.
You went up into the stratosphere a little higher where you could call it space, right? Because they were weightless for 10 seconds and then they came back down. Okay, big deal. But you took all of that money that could have gone into childhood cancer research that you canceled, Trump.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Reason that caused such a problem is if they just went up and they did their thing and they came back down, that's fine. But they were so fucking tone deaf about it.
That's it.
It's such an elite attitude. Katy Perry comes down. She's up in the fucking atmosphere for 3 minutes. She comes down in her Oscar de la Renta spacesuit. I don't know if people know that. Very expensive
Yes.
spacesuits. Comes out and kisses the ground as if she's done something. Gail King talks about why are people pushing back? What we did was important. You didn't do anything. You were in an automatically remote controlled fucking spaceship. You went to, I don't know where they went in the atmosphere, the edge of the atmosphere or whatever, and then you came fucking back down. Some people make it akin to a space Uber with a chance to take a selfie, and that was it. But then they come down and they talk about how important it is. Like Gail King says, I can't even imagine referring to myself as an astronaut. Bitch, you're not an astronaut.
No.
You're a fucking writer. And then she goes to this part. She says, they're just calling us writers. They wouldn't do it if we were men. Trust me, we would do it if they were
Oh
men.
yeah. We did it
These people,
when Bezos did it himself with his cowboy hat and his
yeah.
other oligarch friends. That's all it was. They were just writers. They weren't running anything.
But
It's like when go
At
ahead.
least when Bezos got off, he didn't act like he was Jesus Christ and he did the greatest thing ever. He just shut up and moved on. I don't respect him anymore. But the fact of the matter is, these people spent $600,000 to get a selfie and to make themselves look important. It's all about performance, it's all about perspective. And people at this day and age who are struggling financially because of the government we have are fucking pissed off when rich people start to flaunt their shit in their face when they can't fucking buy baby food.
Well, I did a little math, which I don't usually do. I'm not that good at it, but I was able to look up and find out that Jeff Bezos paid 0.98% of his income in federal taxes. 0.98%. I ran my own. I paid, got a drum roll,
All right.
1.67.
Yeah.
He's a billionaire. I'm a pensioner. I paid almost twice, almost half again. As well, you can do the math. 0.68 and 1.67. I paid more percentage-wise in tax than he did.
Yeah. It's
And you probably
I
paid more than I did because you have your wife also has an income and so forth. And what I don't know what you pay in taxes. I wound up paying right around $1,000, which is what I usually come out at. But because I don't have any deductions anymore,
right.
except the
Well,
standard.
well, and I think it's becoming more and more clear. It's always been Republicans versus Democrats, and that's just been a ruse. It's really a class war, and I think people are starting to figure that out, and they're starting to push back. We saw it with Katy Perry and Gayle King in this last flight. We're seeing it with Elon Musk. I think people are finally getting it. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's those motherfuckers against us, and we need
Yes.
to fight to push back on that. Don't get caught in the fucking distraction of the division here. As much as Republicans, I don't like them. They're fucking you just as much as they're fucking us, and it's unfortunate we have to wait till you get your ass kicked to realize what we've realized for the last 10 years.
And this is the point of what you're saying too. And we have to keep pointing this out because being in a red state, I know that most of the people here below a certain level, they do not pay taxes because their income is too low.
Right.
The median income across the state of Tennessee is like $31,000 or something like that. But there are people who are half that and below, right?
Right.
They pay no taxes. So no federal taxes. We don't have a state tax, but they pay through the wazoo in sales tax and property tax. So if they
Right.
own a home, even if it's a plot with a trailer on it, they're paying some on that. They're paying almost 10% at the grocery store, and they then have what's we have here is what's called a wheel tax, which is a personal property tax on your vehicle that you have to pay every year. Your license tabs are way high, but they don't realize though that the money that we get from the Fed that people like you put in and people in California put in, and all of the blue states put in, and then the red states get back. When that money stops, which it's going to do, because that's what the Republicans are stopping. That's where the fraud and waste and all of that is. All it is just the funding of the safety net. When that stops, they will notice it because, you know, free lunch, Meals on Wheels here. That comes from federal money. All of that kind of stuff that's going to go away. The nursing homes will have to roll people out on the sidewalk and walk away because they'll have to close because the money to pay the people to take care of them and feed them and give them the medications, it won't be there anymore. They won't be able to pay for heat or light or anything else. Those and the hospitals, the rural hospitals now that depend on Medicaid for their very life will close. So right now, my local hospital is basically a clinic now. You can go to the emergency room, and they have put a lot of providers in there that would have been in an office building somewhere years ago. They're using it as a medical building rather than a hospital. Same with the one in Hancock County nearby. So everyone will then have to drive at least 30 miles, and I tell them to keep going. I have a friend right now who's in the hospital, and because she got very poor medical care over the years, she's being transferred to Cleveland Clinic, and I hope she survives. I don't know because the care she got here up until that point was so abysmal and so poor that I was lucky. When I had a procedure, my urologist said, There's no one in the Tri-Cities who can do this operation safely. I'm sending you to Knoxville, which she did, and I survived and did well. A neighbor has a son who had the exact same procedure locally. He's walking around with a colostomy bag. I'm
Wow.
not.
Well, you're bringing up the health issue, and we were talking about it before we started
Yeah.
talking on the show about RFK Jr. RFK Jr. is famous for saying, uh, "Make America healthy again." That's what he
Uh-huh.
says. I wonder where he got that concept. Anyway,
Yeah.
and then on the same yesterday or the day before, they announced that they fired 27 scientists, and they've cut budgets by a third. There was health care for people with HIV and medication for those folks to keep them alive, maybe as many as 20 million people. Um, and they cut that completely. So all these people are at risk at dying a horrible death with HIV and
Yes.
ultimately AIDS. Um, but RFK Jr. comes out here with just some of the most ridiculous shit. I mean, I don't know what's more of a problem with the Trump administration is that they are evil or that they're just dumb. I mean, RFK said something the other day. He was talking about people with autism, and he was saying, you know, they can't go to school, they can't earn money, they can't pay taxes, they can't even go to the bathroom. And what
But
was
they can be
ironic
the
about
richest man in the world.
right, right. What was ironic about that is yesterday I had Jay from California who's moving to Canada. He's
Yeah.
autistic, pretty bright kid, pretty articulate kid. Does RFK, is he just trying to gaslight people or does he just not know what the situation with people who are autistic is?
I think that RFK suffers from the exact same syndrome that Donald Trump does. Because they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth,
Right.
they think they have worth just because of their existence, um, that they're at the top of the heap because they deserved it. They didn't have to earn anything. They were born with millions of dollars, if not in their personal account, they had access to it. And they were coddled. They were sent to the best schools, even if they didn't learn anything in it. I mean, here you have Trump, who was one of his professors said was the dumbest person he ever met, and then you have RFK, who got heavy into drugs and all of this stuff, but they still think that anything they think is has intrinsic worth just because they thought it, not
Right.
because they put in the time to actually learn the science behind it. He's not a doctor. He has no medical experience whatsoever. Anything that he believes he either got off the internet or some weird uh, non-scientist somewhere came out with a paper that they sent to him and he read it. And, he has no gravitas in this area at all. Zero, zilch. And that is with every cabinet appointee that Trump did. The evil picks the dumb. Let's put it that
Right.
way. In some cases, they're also evil, but in some cases, they're just dumb. Linda McMahon, come on, poor woman. She's just dumb. Okay?
He
She was married to an oaf who put together by exploiting a bunch of young guys this wrestling thing, right? That's that she and she was kind of the office staff for him or something. That's her background. Okay,
Right.
Hegseth, just an asshole. That's his claim to fame, you know.
Well,
But
well, Hegseth, Fox News didn't think enough of him to put him other than more than a part-time guy. He couldn't
yeah,
get a full-time gig at Fox.
no,
When you talk about RFK, there's a perfect illustration of his ignorance and his incompetence. When we look at that measles outbreak down in Texas, it's gotten bigger. It's gone from like 15 people to 500 people, and three people, two kids have died from this, from fucking measles. I
yeah,
mean, give you an idea when you're talking to younger people these days. My son sent me a text the other day, and he's having a baby in May. And, he's worried about the baby. He's real cautious. We had our first granddaughter during COVID. First time I saw her, I had to stand 6 feet away from her and shit like that. And that was justified. But he sends me a text and he says, Dad, did you and mom get your measles shot? What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, when I was about 8.
Yeah.
Do you need to upgrade them? No, bitch, I don't. I've never
Yeah.
had measles because I had the shot. And I said, guess what, son? So have you. So
Yeah.
fuck. The only people getting measles are the people that haven't gotten the shots. The only reason they haven't gotten the shots because they believe the bullshit.
Exactly. And anybody who was ever in the military got every shot there is, and very
Right.
few of them are autistic. No, I granted that they're saying that it's because they get them when they're young or whatever. I don't know. It's all bullshit. The medical establishment is quite firm. They say we have better detection methods now. That's all it is. We find more autism because we recognize it now. Before, these kids probably wound up in reform schools and prison, because we didn't know what was going on there, or they were seen as just idiots and farmed away doing something. The fact is, we recognize the condition now when we didn't recognize it before. And anybody who says different is going against the grain of medical science, and science counts. Science is true whether you believe it or not.
Well, yeah. I mean, you would think people on Trump's side would embrace science because it deals with facts. I mean, measles was a problem when we were young. Polio was a problem. People got vaccinated, and then we didn't have the problem anymore. Just common sense would tell you, well, maybe that works. The thing about it is you've got people like RFK out there telling people, oh, don't take the vaccination, your kid will be autistic. I guarantee you, I had plenty of autistic kids in my schools growing up, but that word didn't exist. We had different terms for it, or we didn't understand it at all. We just thought the kid was weird or whatever. Uh, like you say, now that we know that what it is, or a better understanding anyway, um, we can deal with it. Because I got to tell you, I've known some autistic people, a lot of autistic people. I have some in my family, and the thing about it is uh, autistic people aren't diminished; they're just different. Because the autistic people I know, like Jay yesterday, they're very smart. It may be very specific, but they are smarter than most people regarding that topic. And we should relish in those folks for people being that smart. We should be utilizing their intellectual capability to better things for other people. They have a huge value in the society. But by just saying you're different, so I don't want any part of you. You can't go to the bathroom by yourself. It's fucking ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and this is the thing. Find their strengths and steer them that direction. They will tell you. They will see what they're interested in and let them do it. I have some friends same way, that I know are autistic, whether they've been diagnosed or not, but that they have found where they should be and they're doing well at it. Okay. Now,
Right.
I also should point out that RFK's children are all vaccinated. So are his grandchildren. And if he has great grandchildren, they're vaccinated too, because his brothers and sisters are not fucking idiots. And apparently his wife probably had enough influence that she could get the kids vaccinated. They are vaccinated. It's like everybody, all the Republicans in Congress got flu shots. Even though we were screaming about how you shouldn't get one, they went out and got them.
Well, you were talking about how, when you talk about Elon, RFK Jr., or Donald Trump, some might ask, do they think they're better than us? Yeah,
Yes,
they do.
they
They
really
think they're
do.
superior to us. And I think one thing could be, and this maybe I'm being unfair because this was a different time, but wasn't the Kennedy family, when JFK and RFK Jr.'s dad, didn't they have a sister that was somehow mentally
Yes,
impaired somehow?
yes, mhm,
And didn't they give her a lobotomy and cart her off
yes,
someplace and hide her for her lifetime? Isn't that true?
yes. It's true.
And it was because they couldn't afford to be thought of lesser than because they had a child that wasn't excellent like the rest of their children alleged to be.
Well, it's like the royal family in England.
Right.
We have like a whole wing of a psychiatric hospital that is filled up with their relatives, that they're kept hidden. I mean, it's been galloping through the Windsor family for years, and the Habsburgs before that. It's just when you're inbred, that's what you get. Unfortunately, here in my town, the most prominent couple in my town, their first child had very special needs. Let's put it that way. He spent his life in a quote school in a different state, and they would bring him home for holidays, and he would go back. He passed away in his 30s, I believe, and they named a local sheltered workshop for him too. But he was not a part of the family on a daily basis. That was pretty much what rich people did back then. Anybody who like that, they were institutionalized. And the kids, quite frankly, they got rid of them when they finished eighth grade. They were off to finishing school or a military academy if they were guys. We saw that. We went to school with these kids for 8 years, and then they were gone.
Yeah.
And then the husband and wife would see them on holidays.
Wow.
That's
That's
not that unusual.
now it's sadly not that unusual. And now those people are coming out and telling us, well, these different kids should be shunned and pushed away because it's a bad thing.
Believe me,
And
that's coming. That's coming. That is the Nazi playbook. They will go after the quote. Well, what did they call them? Let's just say special needs people. Beware, beware.
well,
And if you have children who are diagnosed as autistic or in some way or other, beware because. And let me just throw this in real quick. We've seen what private equity has done to the medical establishment. Okay,
right.
they're aiming at the schools now. That's what this is all about. Private equity wants to take over. They want to privatize education. They will not be serving those that they deem less than.
Well, it strikes me as something that was going on in Germany. I think I know the name of it. It was basically cut out and do away with anybody that's lesser than or different than. Did they
Yes.
call it eugenics? Was that eugenics or was it, or am I getting that
Yes,
wrong?
that actually was all over the world, and it was quite popular here too, in the early part of this century and maybe before. But yeah, it was the idea was that you get rid of those who are tainted. You
Right.
remove them from society, or in dire cases like in Germany, you just get rid of them just in the concentration camps or whatever. The idea of this, you stop that from, and Trump has even used those words. He's
Yeah.
even talked about, he talks about it in the sense of minorities primarily. But we, like I mentioned before, he told his own brother with a special needs child that he doesn't know who you are. You should just send him to Florida and let him die. His words. This,
Wow.
well, the eugenics was a supposedly scientific thing that was going in that direction. Um, did you ever hear of, oh, what is his name? Erskine Caldwell was a famous author early part of the century. He wrote Tobacco Road and Godless Little Acre and so forth. And these were, the characters in them were essentially J.D. Vance's family. These were people with no morals, and very little income. And he wrote these books about them. And he was illustrating them as the kind of people we needed to get rid of because he was very much into eugenics. Um, yeah, it's an idea that's been around. It's been simmering underneath all of this time, just like all of these other Nazi ideas. Creating the master race means that you get rid of any taint from minorities, from the those individuals who may be whether it be a physical thing like MS or something like that, or if it be some sort of differently abled in the sense of you're being autistic or being whatever, mental illness of any kind. You just do away with them. But you don't treat. You just get rid of.
I think that's hitting home with some people now, and they're getting scared. I talked to this Jay that's moving to Canada, and when he first heard what RFK Jr. said, um, he was angry, obviously, and then on top of it, he was a little scared. He was going through. He talked about he was going through some classes, and then all this stuff came to a head. What they were talking about with autistic people, and his studies kind of lacked a little bit. And he went to them and said, "Look, man, I'm sorry. I keep up with things really well, but after hearing this stuff, I'm just nervous and I'm scared." And he says they understood that, and that's legitimate. If somebody's out there saying the people you are, we want to get rid of or marginalize, I can see how that would be frustrating. Being an old white guy sitting in the living room, I don't understand it, but I get it. Now we see Donald Trump, and I think this may be a mistake. Donald Trump going after the likes of Harvard and Columbia and such, wanting to control them, threatening to take away money from them, and doing all this sort of stuff. It just strikes me as kind of stupid because when you look at some place like Harvard, there are literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are alumnus from Harvard that are wealthy, that are powerful, that are politically positioned, that got to be a little pissed off about a dumb fuck who couldn't get into Harvard trying to ruin their legacy. Am I
And
right
that's
about
why,
that?
yeah, and that's why he's going after Harvard, by the way, and all of
Right,
these others, the places that wouldn't let him in, that he had to go to a second tier, but
right,
and only because his dad built him a building or something, but
right.
or three, but yeah, absolutely, I think there will be pushback there. Very prominent Republicans from Harvard, from Yale. Name me a president who hasn't been Ivy League. Um,
Right.
there are a couple. I don't think Jimmy Carter was Ivy League. I know I may be
No.
wrong on that. He may have been Harvard or Yale too.
He
But
went to the Naval Academy, I think.
yes, he did. You're right. And then there was LBJ went to a teacher's college, but
Right.
and Nixon went to Whittier Community College or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But presidents have heavily come out of the Ivy League schools in recent history, for sure. Even George Bush, for God's sake. I don't know how many buildings they had to build for him, but he famously said, "See students," but I don't think he was able to do that, quite frankly.
Do you think he'll be successful in trying to? I mean, I heard a story being in Minnesota. Our University of Minnesota is part of the Big Ten. The
Right,
Big Ten isn't 10 schools anymore. It's like 25 schools,
right,
UCLA, Michigan, all this stuff.
yeah.
Um, they're coming together to create a kind of a mini NATO thing, basically saying if they come after one of us, they come after all of us. That could be a pretty
We all
substantial
need to,
thing.
we all need to push back. We need the medical establishment. We need academia. We need the farmers. We need what's left of labor. We all need to come back against this administration. We need to step up because it's like the old poem. First they came for this one, then they came for that one, and then finally there's nobody else except me. They're coming for you. If you're not a billionaire, they're coming for you. They're going to take something away from you. They want you to be. It's like old people like me and eventually you that they don't want us on Social Security. They don't want us on this Medicare. They want us dead. It's that simple.
Yeah.
They just want us dead. We might be good for fertilizer, and that's about it. Because we're too tough to eat.
Well, I turned 65 a couple of days ago. I'm on Social Security and Medicare, and I still have enough wherewithal. If a Trumplefuck wants to come and get my Social Security, come on, bitch. Because if I can't handle you, I got people behind me that certainly can. You're going to have to pry it from my cold dead hands. So you're going to have to kill me to take that shit. Do you feel confident in seeing what you're seeing now, that at least we're starting to see a pushback by the people in this country?
I do, and I see, I see a heavily Republican district with Church giving Chuck Grassley hell, and he's like
Oh,
taken aback. This is probably the only time anybody ever pushed back on him in his whole life. I look at Trump after a game of golf. He looks half dead. I say, play more golf.
yeah, no shit. No shit. What do you think? We're going to wrap things up here because we're getting
Yeah.
down to the last moment. But I've often said that Donald Trump won't make it through his 4 years. I've been wrong about shit, so I could be wrong. He's kind of like a fucking cockroach. But looking at his health, by the way, his health is perfect.
Oh
He's a
yeah.
perfect specimen at 6'3", 225 pounds, which is the same size as a wide receiver, DK Metcalf in the NFL. So he's got to
Well,
be in great shape.
well, remember he had to give his real weight and his real height when they took that picture of the when he surrendered, when he said he wasn't going to surrender and he surrendered, and they took the
Yeah.
booking photo. I think his real height's 5'10", and his
Yep.
real weight is 297 at that point. Now it's more than that now, I guarantee you. He
Yeah.
looks like
Yeah. No.
Jabba the Hutt with a red hat on.
Yeah. He is one ugly son of a bitch, a fat ugly son of a bitch. And I can, people say, well, you shouldn't body shame. Look, I'm out of shape and I'm overweight, so that gives me license to talk shit about people of my ilk. And he's heavier than me by quite a bit, but I'm still a chubby guy, so I can say whatever the fuck I want about that orange fat fuck.
Yeah, I'm just telling the truth here, and I'm still wearing the uniform I wore in 1972, but I've got more wrinkles, that's for sure. And private bone spurs, I guarantee you, could not get into any uniform. They don't make them that big.
I will tell you this: if I had an article of clothing from when in 1972, I would have been 12 years old. If I had an article of clothing, I'd be hard pressed to wear it as a wristband. Nothing of that era would fit me at this point. There's been some dramatic changes since I've been 12. Since I've been 20. Fuck. I don't know. Well, I'm going to wrap things up, Ed. I want to thank you for coming in. It's always good to have an intelligent talk with somebody who. This is the thing I love about the show. I get to talk to a lot of people who know more than me, and then I get to sit here and nod my head and look important and look like I'm smart. So I appreciate that.
Well, you're great for me because you have a sharper memory on the recent stuff, and you can name
For
names and
now.
so forth. What all I can be is just general. But and I can remember the old stuff like Revolutionary War and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we're a good. We've always been a good team, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let people know where they can find you because you're doing some great stuff on TikTok and YouTube and such.
Well, my username on TikTok is at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL, and I use the general title is Reelin in the Years, REALIN apostrophe INTHEYEARS at Holler Troll on
All right.
TikTok.
And you can find them on TikTok and YouTube. If you haven't checked them out yet, what the fuck is wrong with you? Come on, get with it. The last thing I'm going to say is there's a rumor going around that China or ByteDance is going to shut down TikTok with regards to all this tariff shit, just to shove something further in Donald Trump's face. We hear a lot of rumors, most of which aren't true. But do you see China, by way of ByteDance, threatening something like this just to make him nervous? I don't know if it will make him nervous, but there's a lot of money on the table with TikTok. A lot
Yeah,
of his buddies are going to lose money. So do
that's
you see
why
that as a ploy or is it real? Because they're saying
I
Sunday they're going to shut it off.
we'll see. I
Yeah.
hope not. Um, maybe they don't like being in limbo. Maybe they want to have him make some sort of decision and they'll figure out what they're going to do. I don't know. I would hate to see it go away because I've invested time in it. If it does
Yeah.
go away, look for me on Blue Sky. I'm not there yet, but I'll go there. You know,
Blue sky.
and
And I will
and I
tell
will stay on YouTube as well.
YouTube as well. I would check out Substack.
I will do that too.
And there is an offshoot of Blue Sky. It's called Skylight Social.
Yeah.
And basically, what that was, some uh, people who build these kind of things was able to get Mark Cuban to support it financially. And it's very similar to TikTok. It's nowhere near as big, and it's a little stripped down, but it may be an option down the line. But by all means, check out Ed. He's very entertaining, very informative, very smart. And if you haven't checked him out, you're missing out. So thanks, Ed. Thanks to all of you that listen, taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day. We will talk to you again tomorrow.